Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
What's going on YouTube? It's Filthy and we're back with another video. Today we are on free-to-play account again. We're going to talk about a faction and whether you should rank any of the rares up. So we're going to start with the Bannerlords. We're going to go through all the rares and talk a little bit about one or two, maybe the uncommons. And this is basically a video to try and help out new players, maybe people approaching the mid-game. Are these rares worth building? I think that's a terrible term, and I think there's lots of videos out on the internet on Raid that basically lump rares into are they worth building, yes or no. And I think the question is a lot more complex than that. It's a lot more nuanced because this game is more about synergies, gear, than it is about specific champions. So we're going to go through this list, we're going to look at all of them, and I'm going to tell you whether I think they're just straight trash, so they're a chicken, so you can feed them at 3 stars, level them to 30, upgrade them and make them a 4-star chicken if you want. We're going to talk about ones that you might want to hang on to 40, because that might help you either in some scenario with dungeons or perhaps with faction wars, and then you can then turn them into a 5-star chicken, and you maybe get up here and start getting some of these better, epics or legendaries. We'll talk about champions that I think can go to 50, and I would probably 50 them if we got them on this new free-to-play account. And then champs that are worthy of 6 stars in rares. With background, I think I've taken 14 rares to max levels, 60 and 2 uncommons in the 3 years that I've been playing this game on my main account. So rares do have a place. They're much easier to book, they're much easier to ascend, they're much easier to get, because realistically you're going to be stuck with a very limited roster to start off with. So this is the roster we've got at the moment. There's just no chance we're not relying on a few rare champions to get us by at the moment. So Bannerlord rares. First one, Crossbowman. This guy is a chicken, he's not very good. So his A1 has got a 15% chance of placing an extra hit, so that is rubbish, absolutely dreadful A1. He will do a 30% crit rate buff on it will just pick somebody for 2 turns, then gives him an extra turn. That is a terrible move. And also he's got a single target 50% stun, and then also has a 50% chance of the big version decreased speed. Awful champion, not very good HP at 13,800, not great speed at 95, okay defense at 936. So this guy's a chicken, not even useful for faction wars in my opinion. I would just straight feed him. The next one, Valerie, is a champion you can farm from the campaign. Her A1 literally does nothing. It is attack 1 at enemy. What she's known for really is this ability here. So increase the duration of all buffs on allies by 1 turn. Also decreases the duration of debuffs on allies by 1 turn. So it's a cleanse. You take the debuffs down by 1 turn. So like a mini cleanse, not a full cleanse. It won't wipe 2 turn poisons off, but it will also increase your own buffs. Also, in addition, it places a 25% increased attack on all allies. That's not really that useful. That has to synergize with, obviously, attack champions. Where can she be useful? Well, let's say you've got somebody who's providing the big version of increased defense, or continuous heals, or block buffs. She can extend them. So she is a debuff, decreaser, but it's buff extension really is her main role. At A3, she also puts a shield on everybody for 2 turns. It's dependent on her level. I don't think it's a big shield by any means, but if you want to book her up, you can get extra copies through the campaign. And she also has a ally HP faction crit of 22. So I'd say she's somebody who you can either put into the chicken category. You don't have to build her. The only way I would be taking her to 40 is if I needed the buff extension. So I had somebody providing block buffs on a 2-turn duration with a 3-turn cooldown, and I wanted it up for 3 turns. You'd have to speed tune her, you'd have to build her so that she was survivable. So I'd say you could take her to 40 and use her in faction wars. If you were desperate for this debuff, for this buff extension, maybe you could build her to 50. I'd be really reluctant to take her to 60. I just don't think she's a very good character. So she could really go on any of the categories. It just depends on whether you want this increase the duration of buffs. I don't think it increases unkillable. It doesn't increase block damage. It's just, block buffs and continuous heal. So that's a bit of an account dependent one. I've chickened all of hers so far on this account. I don't really plan on building her, but maybe we get to the point we say, well, she's worth taking to 40 just for faction wars at some point. Next one, Grandmaster, HP based champion, attacks one enemy 3 times. Now, a multi-hit A1 is a bit of a rarity, so this has got us a little bit interested. Finite progression, this could be okay, but if you've been playing the game in the last few months, you've probably got Rhonda as a free character. She's got a triple hit A1, is a legendary, so this guy's utility for that goes down a little bit, because there are enough champs in the pool with multi-hit A1s. His A2 attacks one enemy, 40% chance of placing decreased attack for 2 turns. I mean, you would never book this champion because he's just genuinely not good enough, but it is the small version of decreased attack. Only 40% chance, so again, I don't think this is a particularly good move. Not a bad move, but not a good move. And then he's got a single target, 50% chance to place a provoke, and I'd say that's a pretty rubbish move. Magic HP only, so only blue affinity champs benefit from his aura, which is 17% HP in all battles. Speed of 100 is good, defense of 1000 is good, HP is okay, maybe on the little bit higher side of 16,000. I'd probably chicken this guy unless you don't have access to anybody else with multi-hits for Fire Knight and you're really struggling, in which case you could take him maybe to 40 to try and help out. But in general, this guy is a bit of a chicken. Myriamdom. This guy looks like he might be decent because he's defense based. He has very high defense of 1200 for a rare. Speed 99, very good. 15k HP is okay. He has a 20% chance to provoke on his A1 if the target has higher max HP than this champion. So you don't build him with HP, and then he has and then he will potentially land this on a 20% chance. Not a very good A1, low chance, conditional, so a bit rubbish. He has got the AoE decreased attack, so he can put it on everybody. Only a 60% chance, takes a lot of bucks to get it up. It's the small version, so you don't really want to be investing in this, but it is an AoE and it does have the decreased attack. This is probably the biggest problem with this guy's kit. Places a 50% ally protection buff on all allies for 2 turns, gives himself a continuous heal of 15%. The issue with ally protect is basically what happens is as the team all take damage, half of it gets redirected to him. He's not going to be tough enough to survive a big slap from something without being built up significantly, and all he's given himself is a heal. He's not got block damage, he's not got any other means of mitigating his own damage coming in, so I think he's just going to get slapped, and you'll build this out to do the ally protect and he'll be dead as soon as somebody gets hit with something, so not particularly good. His aura defense in dungeons by 20% is okay, but we can get a Greybeard Skinwalker from the campaign who has a 30% dungeon aura, so no need to get him for that. I would even probably be reluctant to build him for faction wars because again, I just think this ally protect is probably going to get you in trouble unless he is a particularly high powered character, so I'd probably put him in the chicken category. If you want the decreased attack, you could, and you're very early game, you could do him up to 40. Again, I got him on this account. I decided the decreased attack was not good enough, and I just chickened him. But nothing wrong with taking him to 40, 5-star chickening him later. Next up we have Misericord. She's terrible. Attacks one enemy 2 times, 15% chance of placing the big version of decreased speed. For an A1, decreased speed would be good, but such a miserably low chance, 15%. Even on each hit, that's going to be going off less than probably 1 in 4 A1s, so probably not great. She has an AoE on her A2, fills her champion by 5% for each living enemy, so maybe you can get 25% turn meter fill after using this skill, so it's just an AoE, so to get anything out of this you'd have to put her in a stun set, I guess. And then she will counterattack buff and increase attack herself for 2 turns, and then comes in with the return hit. Now, there is a champion Templar who you can get for free out of the campaign who counterattacks whenever he gets debuffed. and he's got a much higher chance of placing the big version decreased speed. He doesn't have an AoE, but he's got a 4-turn hitter with provoke and block damage, so I think he's better. Her defense is pretty low at 850, her HP is really low at 1200, so she's squishy, so she's a chicken. Preserver, you need her for Raz Infusion, so you need to keep 1 copy of her. Other than that, she will attack 1 enemy 2 times. She has a 15% chance of placing 30% decreased speed, almost exactly the same as the last girl that we looked at. Again, obviously for the same reasons, I don't think that's a good move. She will put a 7.5 continuous heal buff and shield on herself for 2 turns. The value of the shield is related to her max HP. Rubbish move. Like, what do we care whether she's got a shield and a continuous heal? And she's got a single target 75% chance of freeze. All of this kit is terrible. She has an HP aura of 17%, which is marginally better than your starter champ of 15%. So she is a total chicken. Even though she does have good speed at 102, even though she does have good defense at 1100, even though she's got okay to good HP for a rare 1600, I still would absolutely chicken her. We've got 1 copy on the account. The next one is going to be chickened. Courtier, rare attack based champion. A1, attack 1 enemy, has a 25% chance of placing freeze. Not great A1, has a slight degree of crowd control, so not terrible but not amazing. Has a triple hit A2, that would be good, but it's on a 4-turn cooldown. Each hit has a 30% chance of removing a random buff from a target. So we can do buff strip. Again, from the campaign, you can get Conqueror, who's in fact in this faction we'll look at later, who does buff strip, so that is not useful to us. He then has an AoE that hits twice, has a 33% chance, really weird number, of placing the big version of decreased speed. This is an okay move. AoE, you could put him in a stun set, get a stun out of it, and you also got like 1 in 3 enemies is getting the big version of decreased speed. His speed's not great at 92, defense is low at 900, HP is low at under 13,000. He's going to be hard to keep alive. I don't think this is enough to really justify doing anything with him. If you're really stuck for faction wars, you could do him to 40, but again, he's not a champion to invest in at all. Bombardier or Bombardier, however you like to say it, we have got attacks 1 enemy, 5% chance of increasing the duration of debuff by 1 turn. So debuff extension is great, but 1 in every 20 times? No thanks, that's like almost 0. His A2 single target places 30% increased speed on him for 2 turns if he crits. So you'd have to build him with high crit rate to get any value out of that, so that's terrible. And then his A3 attacks 1 enemy 3 times, each hit with a 50% chance of placing small poison for 2 turns. Awful, because you know you're going to get 1 to 2 poisons per turn every 4 turns, and it's the small version. No thanks. And he has crit rate aura, which is generally terrible, 12%. Stats wise, not good. Speed is decent at 98, defense awfully low at 881, and HP not very high at 12.5k. So again, he is total cluck chicken. Quaestor, we have got another rare attack champion. Attacks 1 enemy, inflicts 30% extra crit damage if this champion has less than 50% HP. Conditional extra damage, don't like it. We have got an A2, attacks 1 enemy, places increased 15% crit damage on all allies for 2 turns if he crits. Extra crit damage for your team would be handy, but you're going to have to build him with high crit rate. It's only on a 4 turn. So again, I don't think this move is particularly good. Then we've got an A3, attacks 1 enemy, 75% chance of removing 2 random buffs from the target. So again, buff strip, same point as before. We've got a champion in this faction who's free from the campaign who does this move on a shorter cooldown that is better. Stats wise, we've got speed 95, defense rubbish 859, HP okay 13,000. So no, he's a chicken as well. And we finally get to somebody who's decent. Spymaster is a rare HP based champion. His A1 attacks 1 enemy, 40% chance of decreasing the duration of 2 random buffs on the target by 1 turn. That's actually quite decent for an A1. He's going to hit somebody, maybe they've got block damage up, maybe they've got revive on death. He can strip that 40% chance to take 2 of them and reduce them by 1 turn. Most of those buffs last for 1 turn. If it's 2 turns, well, it's not quite as effective. But a little bit of buff strip on the A1 I do actually quite like. A2 attacks all enemies, 50% chance of block buffs for 2 turns. Good move because it's an AoE. 50% chance is not too bad for blocking buffs. You could book it down to a 4-turn cooldown. You could increase the chance up to 60% without any masteries if you did book him out. I think that's an okay move. Again, because it's an AoE, you could try for a stun set so that you're stripping with the A1 or stunning. You've got an AoE with a stun or block buffs or both. And then his A3 places counterattack on him. 75% chance of provoking somebody. 2 random people for 1 turn. So crowd control wise, he could be a really good champ. So you can book that out to 100% provoke on 2 random enemies. 5-turn cooldown, he could counterattack, take some buffs away, maybe stun them. He can maybe stun here, and his damage is based on HP. He's got stats that I like because his HP is just under 20,000. That's really good. Defense is fine at 936, and good speed. I'd say he's a candidate for going to 50. I would definitely be taking him to 40 for Faction Wars. I think you could 50 him for Faction Wars, and I think he would be a pretty good crowd control enemy of Force Affinity, which is something that you don't really get at the start of the game. So I'd be interested in the build. If we pulled him out of a Mystery Shard, I'd be considering, he'd be on my list of potential 50s. Obviously, if you get a better crowd control champion of Force Affinity, then you don't need to build him to 50. But you could still consider doing so for Faction Wars. Probably quite useful in secret rooms as well, because there is a rare HP secret room. Cataphract, another rare HP champion. Attacks 1 enemy, 20% chance of placing 50% decreased accuracy. I don't really like this. Decreased accuracy can be useful at times, but 20% chance is not great. You're not going to have any resist at the start of the game, so decreased accuracy is pretty meaningless. Block buffs and increased defense of 60% on him only for 2 turns. Books down to 3-turn cooldown. But normally this kind of move you have, and then you're going to provoke. He doesn't do that. It's the A3. Attacks one enemy. Will ignore defense if the target has less than 50% HP. So that's going to be a good move for Arena. Damage increases according to his max HP. So based on attack and HP. So probably quite a hard hitting ability. I've never built one of these guys because just building this guy for Arena seems like a little bit of a waste. He's got an HP aura only for Arena. Good stats for HP, 18,000. Defense not very good at 800. And then speed okay at 75. So it's basically a question, would you build this guy for Arena? Absolutely not. You'll find way better champions. So I think he's a chicken. Now we come to the aforementioned Conqueror. You can farm this guy out of Act 1 in the campaign. Double hit at A1, not particularly great, but at least it is a second hit. And then this A2 attacks one enemy, removes 2 random buffs from the target. Now this has a full stop here. I haven't tested this guy yet. I've got one on this account. We will build him up to 40. I'll make a little guide on him. Because there's a full stop, he might just remove the buffs anyway. It might not be actually dependent on the hit, but otherwise he might weak hit and not take the buffs. But you can get this onto a 2-turn cooldown, so it's not the end of the world if he misses it. You've got a 30% chance of a weak hit, so it doesn't happen that often. But this would be good for the magic keep, stripping the shield. Be good for taking the block buffs off the spirit keep. And he's got an A3 which will attack one enemy and then he blocks revive. Now, not great all in all. He's got an increased attack aura of 18%. You'd probably never use that. His stats are terrible. HP 1200, squishy. Defense of under 800, squishy. Speed 99 is okay. So I'd say this is a 40, and that is simply because you might want to use him for stripping the buffs. You can use a level 40 character to strip buffs all the way up to stage 15 on the potion keeps. So he is somebody who you could 40, and he would, get you going on Bannerlord Faction Wars if you wanted to. If you're going to use him in the Spirit Keep because of this remove buffs, he could be a good candidate for a heal reduction set to place that as well. Halberdier, we've got another attack champion. Attacks one enemy, 25% chance of placing the big weaken. It is the big weaken, which is nice. 1 in 4 chance is low. Books improve the probability. So that's an interesting A1. Attacks one enemy on his A2, will ignore shield and block damage. That is so niche, it is not worth worrying about. These tend to only be a problem in very specific scenarios, waves, maybe arena. And he's not going to be good enough for arena. And his passive just increases his own crit damage by 40%. If it was all allies, then maybe that could be interesting. But he's got miserable HP of 1200, good defense of over 1000, and an okay speed of 97. Again, that guy, I'm afraid, is just a total chicken. Riscarm, I missed the last fusion. I was one of these dudes short, so I just hate the absolute sight of this guy. But he's defense based, so he attacks one enemy, 20% chance of stun for a turn, so a little bit of crowd control on the A1. Stun is one of the better crowd control moves, we like it, but it's not great. There's an AoE on the A2, that's okay, books down to 3 turns, places a shield on him for 2 turns, equal to 20% of them. It says their max HP, I presume it means his, I don't know, maybe it adds all the enemies up and puts a shield in. It's a shield either way. I don't really know how big because I haven't built one. Counterattack on himself for 2 turns, books down to a 4-turn cooldown, and 30% increase defense on all allies. So what are you getting out of this guy? You're potentially getting a stun on the A1. He can counterattack, so he can activate his own stun with the counterattack. Okay, that's nice. We've got increased defense, small version on everybody for 2 turns. That's okay. You've got defense and faction crips by 20%, and then you've got an AoE with some shield. So you could put him in a stun set, and that would boost up your chances of stunning with your A1 with your counterattack. It would obviously give you a stun chance on your A2. So I'd say for faction wars, I think this guy's decent. He could be an okay crowd control enemy. He's probably on the poor side for dungeon wave crowd control, because really you'd be relying on stun activation or just somebody hitting him and him randomly getting a stun off on his A1. So I'd be really reluctant to take him past 40, but you could use him in some dungeons, and you could certainly use him in faction wars. HP 1660, 80, so good HP, really good defense 1200, speed 95, so a little bit of damage mitigation for your team, a little bit of crowd control. I don't think he's the worst champion. I'd be really reluctant to take him to 50. You'd have to really be struggling for champions, I think, in my opinion. Next up, we've got a Void Rare defense-based Chevalier. This guy is going to be harder to get, obviously, because of his Void affinity. He's got a 2-hit A1, 20% chance of repeating the attack, so 1 in every 5, you get a 3rd hit. Triple hit is obviously nice for Fire Knight. Ignores block damage and shield. Again, not really useful. There's some very, very niche uses for that, but it's not like if somebody in arena puts up block damage, you're going to be hammering them with his A1. His A2, single target, 50% chance stun debuff for 1 turn. Not great. You can book it up to 75%. Single target stun's not really very useful. He does 30% increased defense and 7.5% continuous heal on all allies for 2 turns. Does book down to 4 turns if you use a book and you got lucky with it. It's the small version of increased defense. It's the small version of continuous heal, but he would be providing some sustain and damage reduction. He's also got a defense in faction crips by 19%. Again, I'd say he falls into the category of the last champ we looked at. I'd say he's worth a 40 for faction wars. You can use him in obviously every dungeon and everywhere because he is Void. His HP's decent, 1600 and 680. Decent defense of 1100. Speed okay of 98. Again, is he worth 50ing just for the increased defense of the small version and a small heal? I don't think so, but he's close. If you had absolutely no champions to build, maybe a consideration for a 50, but again, I'd be very reluctant. 40 would probably be his limit for me, but definitely not a chicken. I wouldn't chicken him. He could be useful in faction wars with his kit. Next up, we've got Vanguard, another void defense rare. Attacks one enemy on his A1, places 30% decreased defense debuff for one target if the target's defense is lower than this champion's. So his defense is 1,000, you'd have to pump him full of defense, and that just doesn't make sense because his kit is attack based, so I think that's a pretty rubbish A1. His A2 is only single target, provokes, but only if decreased defense is out, so he has to land decreased defense, then he can provoke. So again, conditional, rubbish, do not like it. And his passive decreases the duration of all buffs when hit. Now that's an interesting move. There's a legendary champion, Harvester Jack, or Jack Harvester, somebody like that, the pumpkin head guy. He is really good because that's part of his kit. Whenever somebody hits him, it takes buffs off. I don't think that's a reason to buff this guy or to build him. All res aura in battles of 30, not great. So basically, what would he be? A damage sponge who like takes one buff up whenever he's hit, and then the rest of his kit's really weird. I think he's chicken. I would not even hold on to a copy of him. HP 14,700, defense over 1,000, and speed kind of mediocre at 96. I wouldn't be building him at all. Steadfast Marshall, another void, HP. We've got a single target A1, 50% chance of placing provoke for one turn if the target's HP percentage is lower than his HP percentage. So if he's at like 20% HP, he's only got a chance of landing the provoke on somebody with lower percentage HP, and then it's a 50% chance. So I'd say that's a crap A1, it's not useful at all. He does big version of increased defense on himself for 2 turns, then gets an extra turn, and he puts Veil on everybody bar himself for 2 turns. Now Veil means your champs can't get targeted, it means that you get some damage reduction, so that's a good move. He will have buffed himself up with 60% increased defense. He's got really high HP for a rare, over 20,000. His defense itself is really low at 782. His speed's no good at 90. I would maybe 40 him for faction wars, but I wouldn't 50 him at all. I just don't think his kit is good enough. It's been slim pickings, guys, so far. I think we've said basically all of these rares are shit, and that none of them really are worth 50ing. But Dagger, I think, is the exception for this faction. I think she's actually a really good champion. A1 attacks one enemy 2 times. Each critical hit decreases the target's turn meter by 4%. So if you build it with high crit rate, you could get some turn meter reduction. Double hit A1 with a little bit of turn meter reduction. Not brilliant, but not terrible. Her AoE A2 is what shines, I think. Attacks all enemies, 50% chance of doing the big version of decreased defense for 2 turns. With books, you can get this up to 75% chance. With masteries, I think you get up to 80%. Now, 80% is not 100%, so it's not consistent, but she does have the benefit of being void affinity. So you'd be comparing her to a War Maiden, who you could get out of the campaign. War Maiden has a 100% chance to land the decreased defense, so that's better than 80%. But on the other hand, she's force affinity, so for spirit waves, spirit levels, spirit enemies, she's got a 30% chance of weak hitting. So is it better to have a void champ who can do the AoE decreased defense but only 80% chance, or is it better to have a force affinity champ who does it 100% of the time but then can 30% of that weak hit? That's quite a close call, but I also like this ability on her A3. Attacks one enemy, 50% chance of placing decreased attack for 2 turns, small version. If the decreased defense is already landed, then actually it goes up to a 50% chance of doing the bigger version of decreased attack. You can book it out to 75%, and it could be on a 3-turn cooldown. So for clan boss, you could get decreased attack and decreased defense, void affinity on the same champion, and I think that's quite interesting for an early game account. Now you've got a bit of a problem with her, and that is keeping her alive because she's going to be squishy as hell. HP low, 12,720, defense miserable, under 800, very quick at 101. I think she's worth a 50 because there will be times when War Maiden is the wrong affinity and you're wanting to land decreased defense, so she could be useful for that. If you've already got a War Maiden and she's fully built and you intend to take War Maiden to 60, I'd say your need to build Dagger becomes less. If you have somebody who is already bringing the big version of decreased attack for Clan Boss, I'd say the need to build it goes down a lot. So it's situational. I would say she's definitely a 40 for Faction Wars. She's probably a 50 for Faction Wars, because having the decreased defense will speed up your runs a lot. So I wouldn't really ever be feeding her until I could absolutely smash Bannerlords without her. And sometimes you do get challenges that you have to take a rare along with you for Faction Wars, and she is definitely the best Bannerlord rare. She also has a attack faction aura of 20%, so may be helpful for speed farming if you've got a bunch of attack based champions. Probably unlikely, you'll probably never use it, but it is there. So there we go. So to recap, they're all crap apart from Dagger, who I think there is a justification for potentially taking to 60. It would depend on your account. Definitely worthy for 50 though, which is good. Now in the uncommons, I think all of them are rubbish bar Commander. Commander has got miserable stats because she's an uncommon. Defense is only 770. HP is okay, nearly 15,500 should we say. A1 has a small chance of stun. You can get it up to 25% for a stun. That's no problem getting books for her. She's essentially free. Just pull her out of mystery shards and out of the market. But her A2 is actually really nice. Goes down to a 3-turn cooldown when booked, and it is heal the ally with the lowest HP by 40% of this champion's HP. So you build it with really high HP everywhere. If it fully heals the target, it will then completely fill the turn meter, so they get a free go. So obviously, if let's say they were far away from the turn, that's really powerful. If they're about to take the turn anyway, it's not that useful. She can't do it on herself or other copies of herself, I don't think. The heal can be booked up, so I don't think these are additive, but it can be quite a decent heal. And if you got her HP up to like 40,000, because you took her to 40 and just pumped HP everywhere, HP and speed, that could be quite a good little move. And she would be a 40 for Faction Wars with a view to turn her into a 5-star chicken later. The rest of them I don't really like. But yeah, so that's it. I think you've got a couple of options for free: Valerie, Conqueror, and then also Commander. They're going to form the basis of your Faction War team very early on, and there's a few extra rares that we picked out: Spymaster, Riscarm, Chevalier, Steadfast Marshall, who could maybe be worth it. Maybe this guy if you got him, and then definitely you want to be doing Dagger, and then after that you're moving on into epics and legendaries. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, thumbs up would be greatly appreciated. I'm going to do all the factions individually, because otherwise this video would be like 6 hours long if we just went and did all of them. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked it. I'll be back with some more videos real soon. Take it easy, guys. Peace.